Welcome to the Part-Time Gamers Club, where we game part-time but support gaming all the time. For those of you tuning back in, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. And for those of you that are new, I'm Gio. Alongside me is Gerard and Mike. And on today's episode, we want to discuss gaming journalism and is it benefiting or actually doing more damage to publishing companies these days? So, Mike, Gerard, I sent you guys that not podcast, but video from Sun Grand Studios.
Oh,
Uh,
that's the
I thought he
solo
brought up some
video.
good points.
That's
Yeah, thought he brought up some good points, so I wanted to talk with you guys about it. Obviously, it came up and revolving around Ubisoft mainly, but we've seen this with other games, so I was curious on you guys' perspective on what he was saying. Basically, these these gaming journalists are actually doing more damage than good by, I guess, pandering or trying to help the studios in a sense by misguiding gamers. What do you guys think? Feel?
I don't know if it's helping studios. I think it's probably either bribe. I don't want to say bribe, but like payout or sponsor, because like some journalisms get paid by companies when they do reviews, like sponsor videos or sponsor ads or things like that. And there's also sometimes where you're trying to like have good faith for the journalist. So like the journalist is either someone who is friends with the Ubisoft representative or seeds the downsides or like the bad of the and try to give them a break, things like that. So there's
Hmm.
could be many things for it. Uh, the th- I do agree with many of the points he's made though, because the bad of journalism is that you need to be unbiased, one, but two, you also need to take into consideration that games are going to be compared to other games. You cannot just look at the statistics of one game in a vacuum. Uh, and that's what like, oh, they have 3 million players concurrently, and I go and like what Ubisoft printed out, and then we go like, well, I mean, if you compare that to the 8 million copies, now 10 million copies of Monster Hunter Wild, like 3 million people playing doesn't mean anything. Even if each of those players bought a copy, that's a main franchise game. That should be it should be more than 3 million. Like 3 million is still a bad number. So
Especially when you spent as much as them to make the game.
exactly. Um, so I I agreed with a lot of points to be made here, and I also think that like he's mostly right. There are some times that are just like debatable, but he
Mhm.
points out a lot of good points.
What'd you think, Mike?
I think, yeah, I agree with Gerard. It does bring a lot of good points about mainstream, and then these journalists may have a hand in these companies to give them a good review. Usually, I would just say just mainly just I would for me personally, I just take everything with a grain of salt for these ratings because everything is subjective, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, but they may think that's a negative review, which may stop some people from buying the game because of that review, but you may enjoy it. So does it hurt? I could see an argument where these journalists are hurting some of the if they're not being like accurately described,
Mm-hmm.
well, at least the integrity of their work. I would say that. I would say the integrity of their work. That sounds better. Um, it does hurt the community, but I mean, it's end of the day, it's kind of just ratings. I don't know. It's like
End of the day,
you,
it's just somebody's opinion.
yeah, it's
Hey,
somebody's opinion. It's just not like you could form your own opinion. Does it play a role? Yes. I'm not gonna say it's not. If I see a bad rating on a game, I may not lean towards it unless word of mouth. If I hear Gio, you
yeah,
say, "Oh, this game is freaking awesome," but the ratings is bad. Maybe I'll take a gander at it. But
yeah.
like I said, it's subjective. It's somebody's opinion. Does it play a role? Yes, I can make an argument. Yes. Does it hurt if they're not being true to their ratings? Yeah, that's why I say the guy made some good points.
I think we see this in all types of media. If you think about it, like sports media, we know the journalists at times are showing favoritism or like not being as honest about players' play. We see the same thing in movies. Sometimes
Yep.
some
Movies,
movies
yeah.
get the ratings that we're like, how did this movie get this rated so highly? This is not like at the end of the day, a movie should be entertaining. And so even if it's a serious movie, it can still be very entertaining. But if it's serious and just boring and just not engaging, you kind of question those kind of things.
But that's
So
subjective though, because that's
no, no,
subjective. Because
I know what I'm trying to say overall though is that we see this in all forms of media, and but right now it feels like the worst in gaming. Like I feel like the trust issue is far worse with gamers and the gaming journalists compared to say the other forms of media. I don't know how you guys feel like because the whole woke movement and all that backlash, a lot of that was driven by gaming journalists, though, if you think about it, because of all the articles they were posting.
I wouldn't say only gaming journalism.
No, no.
The DEI
Mhm.
was not just game journalism. It's also due to the fact that a lot of people that resented the DEI initiatives that gaming companies were doing and implementing, and they were implementing poorly in the first place,
Mhm.
was being pointed out, and then they started connecting dots, seeing like a good example, Sweet Baby Inc., recognizing that this company is influencing certain game companies to do things that they normally wouldn't do, and we don't know if those influences actually made the game worse or better, but we can tell the result of the game wasn't good, and
Mhm.
we're like, hey, the game is not good, and you paired with Sweet Baby Inc., the correlation we will make there is that Sweet Baby Inc. made the game worse. And that's
Well,
like the kind of like thing with DEI majority is like every time we see DEI being implemented, the game's not good. But then it's kind of like survivor bias. Just because you
I
see
wouldn't
the
say it was all
correlation,
good. Yeah.
yeah, because they two like exist together does not
Mhm.
mean that if it was removed, the game would have been good. If like Sweet Baby Inc. or DEI was not included, the game could still be trash. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
hard. It's hard to see those. It's hard to say what could have happened if it didn't happen in the first place. And that's why I call it survivor bias. Just like if you don't already know the story, if planes come back with bullet holes in the wings, you're like, oh, do we need to reinforce the wings? No. The planes that come back obviously survived getting shot in the wings. You should check the planes that don't come back where they got shot.
Okay.
So that's the thing. Ubisoft needs to figure out like either make games without DEI, and if those fail, I think you just suck at making games at this point.
Well, I don't want to just point to them per se because there's been other games recently, like Dragon Age, that the gaming journalists try to boast up and try to help them not completely bomb, but that failed. So I'm just like, how can I say? I feel like gamers have a bigger distrust in their journalists than any other media right now because I think a lot of us as gamers, you know, we wanted to escape reality in a sense, right? That's what gaming was about, escaping your reality, doing things you couldn't do in real life per se. And I kind of feel like these gaming journalists that are out there right now, they're not true gamers because when you do this kind of stuff and you're more like focused on activism or pandering to these corporate, because most of these AAA companies are corporations at this point, they're corporations. So you're not looking out for the gamers by doing that, and now it's even looking like you're hurting the gaming publishers themselves because more players are like I know I do, and I'm pretty sure you do, Gerard. But we tune in more to podcasts or gaming YouTube space to hear our news and see their feedback on the game because we know they're more likely to tell the truth right now.
I mean, that's why there's so many journal game reviews that you could take
Yeah.
as a consumer. You have the streamers, the social media side where you get actual first-hand reviews of these games. That's why, that's why I say everything is kind of subjective, and you take everything for a grain of salt, and you use what you have at your disposal to if you were to play this game, or you want to play this game, a particular game. It doesn't matter any game that each companies are bringing out. So while I may think that it may hurt the journalists that the main, I would say
Mhm.
mainstream journalists, because
Yeah.
that's what we're targeting. But the smaller the smaller ones you could still review, but that's why you have a lot of resources to make a decision on, you know that will help you, aid you, and if you
Yeah.
want to get this game, because there's always going to be a fan base for every game that comes out. That
That's not
it's
100% true. I've seen games
yeah.
die completely because they have no fan base.
I mean,
Well,
there's still a small fan base.
well,
Yeah,
let
you
me
always.
allow me to say this though. Before you go, Gerard, don't you think though that these gaming magazines or journalists are also doing damage to their brand by not being honest? That's why gaming journalism magazines also have been dying out, and these some of them have been going out of business. Like Game Informer is gone. Not that they were one of the worst ones
They're
doing
coming
this.
back. They went on a hiatus. They've restructured and everything. That the funniest thing is the CEO was like, "Why did you guys think we were going to be permanently gone? We just said we were going to be gone for a little bit."
They pulled the MJ.
Yeah. But I don't think it's the brand's fault. I think, and this is gonna be probably a weird, maybe even a hot take. I think it was only a matter of time until journalism got to this point, like mainstream journalism,
Mhm.
because as you said before, Gio, like every entertainment industry does have this divide between critics and the main audience, and that is something that will happen often when it comes to people who are not talking to the main audience about their wants, their thoughts, and their things. Each of these people that watch it already come in with a pre-concept of what a good game is. But if you don't talk to multiple people on what more like other people are thinking, your view will never change. So these critics are probably coming in with a view of like, hey, I played Halo 2 when it first came out. I have an idea of a good game. And it's like, yeah, you do. You have an idea of a good game that came out like 10, 20 years ago, man. Like games change, ideas change, and culture changes. And you need to be talking to people to realize what the audience wants right now. And game journalism right now is people, or like the game journalists, the ones that get hired to write these articles, are one, not incentivized to be like honest, because like I'm assuming the game journalist is like, hey, just write whatever you want, but they also are just not telling them, hey, it needs to be honest, just give us your ideas, or make sure you like as strict as possible. They might be lenient. The journalist could be actually love the game because it's one of their like favorite companies, whatever.
Mhm.
But the second thing is, the game journalist is, and this is like very like true for like YouTubers as well. If you don't have an audience that you constantly talk to, you don't know what other voices are. You are in a like a vacuum. Your only thoughts are your own. So you have no one to bounce ideas off. Hey, maybe Wild's inventory management is great. I had an easy time with it, but you didn't talk to the other 10 people who thought it was trash. Maybe you thought, maybe I'm wrong. They don't have that feedback. And when you have no, like, when everyone's a yes man, your ideas are trash. Your opinions are invalidated because you don't know what is truly good or bad at that point.
Hey, well, I think a lot of that though is like the gaming journalists work with the gaming companies, then these gaming companies say, hey, we're gonna give you this game early to test out, like give you the heads up so you can be the first to talk about it, stuff like that. I feel like there's a lot of favors being handed out. and giving in return.
But they
Uh,
also do that with YouTubers, and
well,
YouTubers are
yeah,
more honest on
That's
absolutely.
that.
true. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Even the independent space can't be completely trusted either. I just why I brought it up was because it was interesting when I saw that video and I thought about it like, maybe these gaming companies, even though they're trying to get journalists to help them and get the audience to buy in, it's actually doing the opposite because maybe these gamers did at first, the first, let's say, last couple of years, were buying the games, trusting the gaming journalists, and then they're realizing, yo, this game is trash. Why they hype this game up the way they did? Like, there's no way anybody can tell me just from looking at the gameplay, watching like maybe 35, 40 minutes of gameplay of Assassin's Creed Shadow. No one in their right mind that's a true gamer can tell me that's a 10 out of 10 game. Nobody in their right mind. There's no reason a gaming journalist or a gaming magazine should have gave that a 10 out of 10. I could say that about a lot of games. And I know you guys can too. So, but it becomes really hard to trust them when they're doing that. Like if they would have gave it an 8 out of 10, excuse me. All right, fine. All right, fine. You want to give it an 8 out of 10? All right, that's fine. But 10 out of 10? 100 out of 100? I've seen like the scores I've seen. I'm like, come on, your brand can't be trusted. You as a journalist, whoever the writer was, you definitely can't be trusted. But not a magazine is questionable too.
I don't know how far I'll go with not being trusted.
Mhm,
Depending on the criteria that they have within their bounds of how they give their ratings. And it could be he just was they may have just been a big fan and just was a little bit biased towards the game. Whether we think it's company driven, political driven. I don't want to say political driven, but
It
you know
could
what
be
I mean.
politically
politics to
driven.
it. It could be because if you think about it, what was the backlash behind Assassin's Creed Shadows? Mainly the black protagonist. Mainly.
But
I would say the mainly one was the lash against Japan and like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
worst.
yeah,
Yeah.
Their inability to research
and
Japan
maybe
Yes.
correctly.
maybe this is part of their plan. You know, put a rating out there where discussion has been made from
Hmm.
either the public. They're gonna get get the game because I know people on my own has gotten the game,
Hmm.
not based on the reviews, but just because the
Or
brand Assassin's Creed.
brand, yeah, that's
Yeah.
kids at this point. If you think about it, we were probably like 8, 15, 16 maybe when the first game came out of Assassin's Creed. So people grew up with Assassin's Creed. So I can
Yeah,
understand them still having a small loyal fan base left after they burned so many of their fans.
I
But
just wouldn't go far as like outright, lie or like
I
misconceiving or I don't know. I don't know if I would want to go that far. Maybe it was just part of how it's done, and it created a conversation, and it built up the game, and people bought the game. I mean, and then now that there's like I said, there's other independent reviewers that people can go to nowadays, where yeah, you can see the main reviews, you can see their ratings, but you get most of it from smaller streamers because they're gonna tell you what it is. Even bigger streamers, they get sponsored by certain games. You seen the bigger streamers get sponsored by like these arcade mobile games that I see. So they have to talk good about it. They're not gonna, say the negative things about it. So it works both ways. Big company, big streamers, but there's a lot. That's the only thing. It's an abundance of them. So like I said, I don't know. I don't know if I would go as far as like
I know
outright lie or something.
that
I am 100
my Mike, were you talking
100%. I'm not
about
going back.
Raid Shadow Legends? Is that the where you're talking about the people that get sponsored by that?
there's big streamers that has been
They're
sponsored by
sellouts
mobile
too,
games. Like
but some of them are
I'm not
sellouts
talking about.
too.
I mean, I
The
would like it to
independent
be
games.
known that being a sell. Okay, there's a caveat to be taken. If you get sponsored to make a video game, and you are honest about that video game, that is not being a sellout. There are a lot of people that get the game ahead of advance and play the game, and that they're going to be honest still. And those are the people that you like. usually follow or things like that because you
Correct.
like their personality. But there are also people who will sell out if they get sponsored and then act chummy about it because they want more sponsorships. But
Yeah,
that
it
is
depends on
taken.
who the people.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on who gets it. Not everyone who takes the sponsorship and thinks highly of it could be a sellout.
Yeah.
But you do have to take, if they're highly thinking of it, with a grain of salt, if they don't normally do that. If they do that mostly, or like it's like, hey, this is actually just up my alley, you can't call them a sellout if they just genuinely like the game.
Yeah, I mean, but how would you like?
How
really know,
would you know
Let me
without
ask you
past the
this
history?
Because he brought this up, and it was a really good point, and then we'll go from there. We'll probably call it after this. But if you're not honest at all times with the gamers, but also the game development teams, how are the development teams supposed to make better games if they don't realize and you're not being honest that your game is trash or it could be better and this is where you're lacking and this is where you're missing your huge audience because they do
Sales.
studies like this, right?
I mean,
think about it.
surveys. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
do
there are
surveys and
surveys
they figure out, okay,
Mm,
if you put that, you implement this, you implement that in a game, or there's certain things metrics you meet per se, you'll get a good audience. But when you're just focused on pushing certain agendas and not focused on, like you said, Gerard, first you make the good game. First you focus on the foundation. You need to have a good game, good concept, good story, and then you add everything else in. Then you add in the DEI and all that stuff.
but here's
But
the
the game,
thing, Gio,
good.
and not to poke holes in your things.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you giving the survey to? Who are you talking to figure out if the game is good? You need to like talk to people. That's what the point of beta tests are for.
testers.
Yeah, beta testers, great.
But they're not doing
Who
that
you
anymore.
giving the beta keys to, Gio? It has to be an open beta test. And if you give it to like a journalist with no beta test and they can't talk to anyone, like majority of like NDAs are just like you can't talk about the game until it comes out, then you can't give any feedback or you can't talk to other people about their thoughts. So everything is closed-minded
But you
in
don't need
that
to talk
regard.
to the audience. You need to talk to the gaming developers. What I'm saying is, if you're not being honest with the gaming development teams, how are they going to make better games? If
The
they
sales
don't
is gonna
like
reflect it though.
no, you're right, Mike. But that hasn't stopped Ubisoft from doing dumb shit.
I mean,
But what I'm
there's always gonna be
No, but
like I
that's
said,
what
there's
I'm saying.
always gonna be enough fan base that they're gonna keep creating.
Well, yeah, that's for
Not
yeah.
enough to keep them above float if they keep bombing the way they have.
I mean that's for Ubisoft, but
Well,
like not
yeah.
non-AAA companies could also never learn if they make money. If they profit from like a low title game and they could have made it better, but they added some stupid stuff, but they still sold like in the equivalent of Ubisoft, they have 3 million players, but the game didn't cost that much to make. They still profit
And
even
sell
if
3
no one's
million
honest.
copies.
Yeah, well,
They
I'm
didn't sell
I'm saying, but we're comparing because like here's another thing. In order to be honest, you also have to assume that they already know what's good, because genuinely they can be honest if they think it's already good, and that's the problem that we get to here. Do you think they're have bad taste? Or that they're not being honest, because they could just also have bad taste, Gio.
No.
Or they are aware of it.
No,
of
you're right.
course.
You're right. And the gaming journalist could be, yes, that could be the case with them. But what I'm trying to tell you is, like you were just saying before, that if the gaming development companies don't listen to the other voices and understand where the other perspectives is coming from, how are they ever going to improve the game if the journalists aren't being honest with them? And then the fan base, their hardcore fans, don't want other people to be honest with them.
Then I don't know how they got jobs. You should be
Yeah.
well
Well,
aware
Ubisoft
of.
is about to lose a lot of people.
That's true.
They're expected
Okay.
to downsize
But-
heavily.
But
Then
like,
there you go.
it is the responsibility of the developers to not listen to just one group of people or two groups of people.
Yeah,
They need to
that's-
take in more than just. They need to actually talk to the audience first off. When you
Yeah.
cut off talking to everyone, you are now responsible for getting bad information. it's not just the journalisms that are failing here. It is also the development teams that are failing here. It's a two-way connection. I'm actually blaming devs more than I am blaming game journalists at this point.
Can I ask you something though?
Yeah.
Since I know,
Well, I don't say devs, but yeah.
In development teams.
Mhm.
No, but that's what I'm going to ask you. And Butchie's dealing with a certain situation too, similar situation where the company wants to rush out the game that they're working on.
Mhm.
And he basically said, he's like, what they want him to implement and still meet the deadline of May, he's like, I can get it done, but it's going to be garbage. He's like, it's going to be broken. He's like, we can push out a crappy product and we have no choice because this is what the higher ups want. And I think that's a big problem too in the publishing. I'm not just blaming the gaming journalists, but if the publishing companies themselves and the higher ups are not listening to the devs, because maybe the devs are saying the same thing the gamers are saying, or at least similar. I would think I know Butchie, you would guys know what you're working on, and you know how much time you need realistically to make sure it works the way it's supposed to on release.
I wouldn't say we would know how long something would take, but we will definitely know the bare minimum we need to get it. And if we say it can't be done by May, it really can't be done. Because I know a whole bunch of developers that will overestimate like the time they need and underestimate the time they need. But if anyone says, no, I can't do it in that time, they genuinely are saying they can't do it. Like if someone says they can do it, you have to take that with a grain of salt. It's like maybe it'll be sooner, or maybe
everything goes right.
Yeah. But if someone says they can't do it, you need to listen to them, because genuinely in the back of their mind, deep down in their cores, they know they can't. So I understand like upper management being the main problem here. And it's hard to say. I don't want to blame devs. I know we were talking about devs, but I don't want to blame the devs, because majority of the time devs don't have say in anything. We don't have say. Yeah, we like they're like in indie companies or things like that. You could probably have more say, but like AAA companies, especially Ubisoft, developers probably don't have any say in the matter. The only thing they probably have a say in is like, hey, this is gonna take me 2 weeks to do.
And it's gonna reflect that. If you rush developers, it's gonna reflect, and I guess that's the reason why Ubisoft is probably
but
part of it, maybe.
Gerard was saying too, I don't think DEI necessarily is why games bomb. I think it's the combination of DEI's games being broken on release.
That's what's really the problem. That's really the
I
problem.
think it's just a combination of everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that they're so focused on DEI, like Gerard says, first focus on making a good foundation. Make sure the game's good. Then you put all the extra stuff. You put the fluff on it.
I personally do not care if DEI is in my game. Just make the game good. Like, honestly, you can put in things I dislike with. If the game is good, I might just play through them. That's how good a game should be first and foremost.
Yeah, exactly. But that's all I had. I just wanted to get you guys' perspective on it, and I know it's big talk right now, not just about Ubisoft, but I'm just the gaming journalists and some of these games that have been getting some of these favorable reviews that gamers have just said, why? So.
Yeah, I think that's Mike, do you have anything to add? Any last
Remember, gaming ratings is subjective. Build your own opinion on it.
Unless you're talking about the ESRB rating, those are made sure that children are playing safe games, okay? Those ratings you should listen to.
Actually, that's true. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Journalist ratings. How about that? I'll specify.
Reviews. Talking about gaming reviews, not ratings.
Exactly. All right, that's it from us. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscription, please. We would like to see more of those. And we do know some of you guys are viewing and not subscribing. We do keep track of that. Also, make sure you leave a comment down below telling us your thoughts on Assassin's Creed, and more importantly, whether or not you think gaming journalism at this point is just bribes and bias. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.